At Home in North Branch. Chapter 8. Daisy Shows Her Hand. A directive came in the mail from the Department of Education, and Sarah Jane and I sat down to read it together. All district schools are hereby notified that a course in general homemaking will be required in the curriculum for grades 5 through 8. This will include instruction in house cleaning, laundry, sewing, simple cooking, gardening, and childcare. The textbook of choice is The Care of Your Home by Letitia Knight, publisher E.B. Ward, Chicago, Illinois, 1894. Practical experience shall be encouraged whenever possible. This course will begin in the second term, February 1895.
Well, Sarah Jane said, I have a few girls that might benefit from Mrs. Knight's words of wisdom. But what do we do with the boys while we're laboring over household chores?
It wouldn't hurt them to learn those things too, I replied. There are a lot of men left alone with families to care for. What do they do then?
Ha! I'll tell you what they do. They call an unmarried sister, an aunt, or a mother to take over. Then they go out and find another wife with all possible haste.
Don't be such a cynic, Sarah Jane. Anyway, whatever your personal feelings are, there's no mention of leaving the boys out. It should be interesting to see what they do with sewing and laundry.
When the book arrived, I was pleased to see that the students' practical experience would be gained under the supervision of their mothers in their own homes and reported in class.
That's a relief, I said to Len as I read it over. I could envision bringing the whole school to the house to practice sweeping, mopping, and cooking. It looks as though we'll just have to read the book together and talk about it, then give assignments for homework. Even so, I think we'll hear some grumbles.
Shortly after we began studying the fine art of sewing, Edward came limping into school.
Oh, Edward, did you hurt your foot?
I asked.
No, ma'am,
he mumbled. Hannah spoke up.
He's supposed to report on his assignment, isn't he, Mrs. Williams?
I failed to see what that had to do with a lame foot and said so. I looked at Edward inquiringly.
Ma taught me how to darn my sock. Then she said I had to wear it today.
She told him to take it out and do it over, but he didn't want to. That's why he had to wear it,
Hannah said.
He's got a big bunch of wool scrunched up around his toes. He'll wish he'd done what Ma said before the day is over.
Edward's face said he already wished it, and I felt sorry for him.
We learn by our mistakes, Edward,
I said.
I'm sure you'll do better next time.
After recess time, I noticed that he had removed the offending sock and stuffed it into his pocket. I hoped he wouldn't suffer frostbite before the day was over. It was Sarah Jane who came up with the prize homemaking report.
This, she said, is an example of Hector Fenton's scholarship. He was instructed to write directions for doing the laundry. He declares it is word for word what his mother told him. She obviously didn't go into detail as far as spelling is concerned, so what he heard is what you see.
She handed me a creased and dog-eared sheet of tablet paper, and I read it with interest.
How to do the washing. Number 1, built a fire in backyard to heat kettle of rainwater. 2, set tub so smoke won't blow in eyes if wind is pert. 3, shave 1 hold cake soap in billin water. 4, sort things, make 3 piles, 1 pile white, 1 pile colored, 1 pile work breeches and rags. 5, stir flour in cold water to smooth, then thin down with billin water. 6, rub dirty spots on board. Scrub hard, then bile. Rub colored, but don't bile, just wrench, and starch. 7, take white things out of kettle with broomstick handle, then wrench, blue, and starch. 8, spread tea towels on grass. 9, hang old rags on fence. 10, peg rest of clothes on line. 11, pour wrench water in the flower bed. 12, scrub porch with hot soapy water. 13, turn tubs upside down. 14, go put on clean dress, smooth hair with side combs, brew cup of tea, set and rest and rock a spell, and count blessings.
I can't wait to see how Hector reports his cooking lesson, I laughed. Is he really that illiterate?
This is a masterpiece, Sarah Jane replied. His skills are mechanical. He can dismantle a piece of equipment faster than anyone I've seen. As for cooking lessons, he may kill us all. The assignment is to make something at home under the direction of Mother and bring it to share with the class. Sort of a junior-sized potluck, I guess you could call it.
What a clever idea. Do you mind if I use it?
Not at all. You've been borrowing my ideas all your life, she grinned. They didn't always turn out to your advantage, as I recall, so don't say I didn't warn you.
We were still holding church service in the schoolhouse by the last week in February. The committee had voted to fix the roof, and the vote had been taken without reference to a new building. This was a relief to Len. I only have one vote, like everyone else, he said. So if they really wanted to push it, I would be outnumbered. I'm grateful that it didn't come up. Jerome stopped by one evening shortly after the meeting. I suggested to Roland Brewer that the shingle mill provide the roofing for the church, and he seemed happy to agree. Will Hiram Elliott be able to do the work? Len nodded. Just as soon as weather permits. I can't recall when we've had this much snow in one winter. After Jerome left, Len returned to the subject of Roland Brewer. I have a hard time understanding that man, he said. Whenever I bring up the church, he indicates every intention of attending. Someday. It probably wouldn't be diplomatic to remind him that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
You're right, I laughed. It wouldn't. He certainly has outdone himself to be friendly to everyone in town, but Augusta still doesn't trust him.
Augusta is a pretty good judge of character, even if she is blunt about it, Len replied. I'm inclined to rely on her instincts. This was as close as Len came to admitting that he didn't have a lot of confidence in Roland Brewer's integrity either. But we had nothing concrete on which to base our doubts. March came in with wild weather and more snow, and even the children were growing weary of it. I used to like the snow, Jamie complained as he dumped a bootful over the edge of the school porch. Now I could do without it. I'm always squishing around with wet feet.
Bring a dry pair of stockings in your pocket, I offered. You can put the wet ones on the stove with the mittens. He brightened at the suggestion and hastened to share it with the rest of the school. I thought ruefully that I would have to stretch a clothesline across the corner of the room if the idea caught on. I had not forgotten my promise to keep an eye on Daisy. I was as sure as I could be without actually witnessing it that she was still plaguing Daniel every chance she got. Her tactics didn't seem to include just the normal teasing that goes on between children. She was downright mean. The week I gave the cooking assignment that Sarah Jane had suggested, Daisy came to school bearing beautifully iced cupcakes. At dinner time, she placed one on each desk. Be sure to finish all your dinner before you eat the cake, I reminded the younger ones. It will wait for you. They evidently didn't believe it would wait long because dinners disappeared in record time and exclamations of appreciation were heard around the room. Not, however, from Daniel Grayson's desk. After a few bites, he began to choke. He turned red, then dashed to the water bucket. Before I could think to stop him, he grabbed the remaining cake and chucked it into the stove. There was no way I could find out what he choked on, I said to Sarah Jane that evening. But I'd be willing to guarantee it wasn't just a cake crumb.
Whatever she's holding over his head must be pretty important to him, Sarah Jane commented. Any boy I know of would have stuffed it into her mouth instead of the stove.
I was afraid of that, I admitted. I think he was about 2 seconds away from clouting her up one side the head, as Abe Lawton used to say. And I was 2 seconds away from letting him do it. I'm getting tired of her shenanigans.
Maybe you should have a talk with her mother.
The minute I have one thread of proof, I'll be standing on her doorstep, I said. Don't think I haven't been watching. As Len predicted, Daisy herself provided the proof. By early March, we had all endured as much winter as we could, yet the ice and snow showed no sign of disappearing. There aren't even any pussy willows to put in the schoolroom, I complained to Ma Williams. I wish I could think of something to add a touch of spring. It's beginning to be depressing.
I have some hyacinth and tulip bulbs, she said. Why don't you let the children plant those and take care of them in the room? I was delighted with the idea and told the children to bring containers from home. Len was able to get enough potting soil from the root cellar, and we spent a morning happily digging and planting bulbs.
They should be in bloom in time for Easter, I told them. They will make nice gifts for your mothers.
The plants were lined up along the windowsills, and everyone watched anxiously for the first spears of green to appear. When the flowers began to bloom, one would have thought that these children had never seen a spring blossom before. The last week of March was dark and gloomy, and the threat of new snow hung heavy in the air.
I don't know why I should be surprised, I said to Sarah Jane. It snowed on our anniversary last year. It's just that we had so much this winter. Where will it go when it does start to thaw?
Right into our schoolrooms, she replied. We'll be wading in mud to our shoe tops. Her prediction didn't do much to lighten my spirits.
Later that week, I went out at recess time to check on the wood supply and returned just in time to see Daisy close Daniel's desk.
I was looking for a book,
she said before I had time to question her.
I thought Daniel had it.
She brushed past me and went back outdoors, and I opened Daniel's desk to see what might have been disturbed. My heart sank as I looked at the purple hyacinth blossom on top of his books. I snatched it out and turned to see which plant it had come from. It was not Daniel's, as I had feared, but Daisy's.
Let's see her pretty way out of this one,
I thought grimly, dropping the blossom into her desk on my way to the door. The first child into the room spotted the damage.
Mrs. Williams, Daisy's flower is gone.
Everyone rushed to the window to inspect Daisy's plant.
Who would do a mean thing like that? Toby said. Did someone come in here at recess time?
I think everyone should sit down, I said quietly, and we'll sort this out.
When everyone was seated, I looked at Daisy. I would give her a chance to tell us what had happened.
Daniel did it,
she said defiantly.
He said he'd get back at me.
Daniel turned pale, then jumped to his feet.
I did not, he roared. She's lying, Mrs. Williams. I wasn't in here at recess time.
All right, Daniel, I said. We'll get to the bottom of this. Let's see if the flower is still in the room. Everyone, open your desk, please.
I watched Daisy as the desks were opened. Her face registered horror at the sight of the hyacinth blossom on her books, but she was not yet ready to give up.
It's in my desk, she said, but I didn't put it there.
You're right, Daisy, I replied. I did. Mouths dropped open, and the children stared at me in disbelief.
Do you want to know where I found it?
I asked her. She looked down at her desk, but did not answer.
Do you want me to say anything more?
I persisted. She shook her head.
All right. I think that's all that needs to be said. I'm sorry your plant was broken. Now let's get our books out and start working, shall we?
The rest of the afternoon was subdued, to say the least. No one spoke until he was spoken to, and even the little ones went about their business in silence.
I'm afraid I didn't take care of it as well as I should have,
I told Sarah Jane later.
I didn't want to accuse her in front of the class. I hoped she would admit what she did.
Now that's what you call being hoist by your own petard, if ever I saw it, Sarah Jane chuckled. I hope she learned that you're likely to fall into your own trap if you set it for someone else. And I don't think you need to tell the rest of the children what happened, she added. They know all right.
End of chapter 8.